give us the purpose of this space, but unfortunately, due to load shedding, they could not join. So I guess I'm just gonna go ahead and just give you guys a brief of why this space and why we are doing this. Um, as everyone might know, that graduation season just came to an end, or is almost coming to an end, and we've realized that there are so many graduates that graduate without being prepared for a life after they have graduated. They don't know what to do with their lives. They don't know where to start with regards to job hunting. They don't know where to go, who to talk to, or where to start. So, as the Habitable Planet Workshop Planeteers Representative Committee, we decided, let's bring this information to the people. Normally, people host such of these talks in like webinars on Microsoft Teams and Zoom, but we decided, let's take it to the people, and let's take it to where the people are, where um, these graduates are, which is social media. Hence, we started this Twitter Spaces, right? But today we decided, let's equip these graduates with information they don't know they need, because such skills we are not taught in varsity. These are the things that we are never taught in varsity. So we decided, okay, let's let's get this information out to the people. That is why we are hosting these spaces, and we have invited some of the best people in the field. We have HR practitioners um, with us today. So, guys, don't hesitate to ask those questions. These people are here to listen to you. These people are here to give you the information you guys need. So, without any waste of time, I'm not sure if Professor Musawenkosi Saurombe is here. If you are here, can you please give me a signal so that I can hand over a mic to you? Um, in the meantime, I'm just gonna introduce our very first speaker of the day, um, who was one of our speakers in the last Twitter space. This is a continuation of the Twitter space that we hosted. I think it was February, where we were talking about all things CV writing, how to write an employable CV, and all of those things. So now we decided, let's take it interview and salary negotiations, because yes, you have written an employable CV, you have submitted it. Now they've called you for an interview. What then do you do? How do you go about that interview? So Pumelele Falita was one of our speakers in the last talk, and we decided to invite him again. He's an HR business partner for a professional services firm. He completed his studies at Nelson Mandela University. I hope back then it was still called Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University. He also completed some of his studies at the University of South Africa. He is a registered HR professional with SABPP, and he has over 8 years of experience. So he has been doing this. So you guys know we bring you nothing but the best. Without any further ado, I'm just gonna hand over to Pumelele Falita, and over to you, sir.
Thanks, Makatu. Please confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right. Thanks, Makatu. Good evening, everyone. I am Pumelele, as Makatu had said. For some reason, I was brought back to speak to this audience. And firstly, I'd like to appreciate the fact that you have taken time out of your diaries to come and listen to this, either to give input or to receive some advice in terms of your career so far. Like Makatu said, we are concluding the graduation season. And as a result, we need to, if we hadn't started yet, we need to now effectively start with, actively looking for a job. We would have seen that, in the previous quarter, unemployment had increased, significantly so. But I'm not here to present statistics. I'm trying to provide advice for what it is that you can do now that you find yourself in this time. A bit of background about myself, from a perspective of being a student as well. My job search effectively started in my final year of studies, in my third year, where I realized that throughout my 3 year qualification, I had not done any work during that time. All of a sudden, I had now wanted to start having jobs on campus, being an orientation leader, and also doing, computer science lab assistance, etc., just to get experience. Essentially, what happened is that I found myself where I had to choose either to pursue further studies or to look for employment. And at that crossroad, I actively started updating my CV and submitting applications for internships while also submitting applications for studies. I had, decided that, whichever comes first, I will take. And then fast track, what happened is that I actually got funding for studies, so I decided to study further. However, during my postgrad studies, I got an offer for an internship role at one of the national government departments. So why am I telling you this? So I'm telling you this so that you understand that, the average graduate can take between 6 to 24 months unemployed. That is looking for a job, making an effort into looking for a job. The fortunate ones are the ones who, upon graduation, are absorbed into the market, either being recipients of bursaries, then they work it back, or being a scarce skill. So each one of you are studying towards something, and it can be a scarce skill or not as scarce as others. So it's important that um, you align yourself to what you've studied. Makatu said I must chat about uh, after having submitted your CV and then being successful in an interview and negotiating your salary. So I want to build up to that. So once you have decided that you're going to apply for a job, you need to update your CV. You need basic information onto your CV: your name, surname, gender, race, ability or disability status, qualifications, starting with your matric, post-matric qualification, and whether or not you have any skills, abilities, and competencies that you have. That is what speaks for you ahead of you actually getting into an interview. We had covered that in the previous session, and I think my speakers might elaborate on those issues. So once you get to the interview, you present yourself, you answer the questions to the best of your ability, and you hope for the best. These are some of the signs that you can look out for you are, if you think that you will make it past it. The first is that once you've successfully completed the interview, if the panel asks you to submit your qualification copies and asks you to do your fingerprints, that's the first sign that you might be progressing in the interview. Once they ask you for references, if they are not mentioned onto your CV, that's a sign that you could be good for the interview. However, very important thing that people tend to forget is they add people onto their CVs as references, but they don't tell them. Right? So very important that whoever that you add as a reference on your CV, inform them that, listen, so and so, I've added you as a reference. Please expect a call maybe this month or next month, throughout the following month, so that they are aware and they are prepared and they can still remember if if it is that you get that call. Assuming therefore that you are successful for the interview, and you will get a call from the HR person to say, hi, so and so, you've been successful, we'd like to give you an offer. And then they tell you the amount that you want. Okay, in an ideal situation, you would have negotiation in terms of a salary. However, if you are an active job seeker and you've never had work experience before, of course it becomes difficult for you to negotiate a salary because you don't have a starting point. So as a first-time graduate, it is advisable that one, when you are considering an offer of employment, is it relevant to your studies? Or is it in line with your career aspirations? There are jobs that you can take that may not be relevant to your studies, but obviously you need the opportunity to have work experience. If you've never had work experience before, it's advisable to take that opportunity because you can build from that. If you've had prior experience before, which means you have a base for which you can negotiate your salary, then how do you know what is your worth in the market? What is the market? Some people say market, but what is the market? So the market is a variety of factors. It's one, the location in which the job or the position is based. Salaries in Joburg are higher than salaries in Cape Town. Salaries in Durban are higher than salaries in Gqeberha. Gqeberha is the lowest paying cost sector in most in some of the areas in South Africa. So where you are determines what the market is. Market also is determined by experience. Do you have enough experience? You can get below or above market. So those are some of the things you can talk about when you are negotiating. However, as a first-time job entrant, it's advisable that you take the offer. Often at times, you find out once you have accepted the job that you could have asked for more. Unfortunately, at that point, it's a bit too late to renegotiate. Your best, the sweet spot for you to negotiate for a salary is when you are at the edge of accepting the offer. Right. Then you accept the offer, you start working. Right. I think let me park it there for the interest of time. Again, those who had previously attended this session, you are more than welcome to refer to the previous recording. However, for me, it is a continuation of the previous conversation to say you would have built up your CV to such an extent that you are applying actively and then you are attending interviews, and what are the telltale signs that you could be successful for an interview, and what are the negotiation points that you want to speak about. I think let me park it there, Makatu. I think it's an open conversation. Of course, there's no PowerPoint presentation. It's a conversation. Let me park it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pumelele. But before I hand over to Muratua, I just have one question. I know we're gonna have a question and answer session after Muratua has presented. I just wanted to ask one thing. You said as a first time job seeker, um, you might as well just accept the offer, right? But now I'm accepting that. Does it matter if I have an honors, a master's, or a PhD? Do I just accept, or should I consider what I have before I then decide to accept? I mean, students are continuing to further their studies because there are no jobs, right? So I do my honors, I try to find a job, I don't find it. Continue, do my masters, try to find a job, I don't find it. Do my PhD, try to find a job. And now that I have a PhD, okay, I get a post and all of that. So does these salary negotiations then change now that I have more qualifications and whatnot? If you can just clear that out before we continue.
Okay, thanks, Makatu. Thanks for that question. And yes, again, we will have a Q&A, but I understand why Makatu is asking this question. So I don't want to delve into too much, but there's something called academic inflation, where jobs that required minimum qualifications are now requiring, maximum qualifications. So, but we'll talk about that later on. So if it is that you haven't been getting the employment and then you study upwards up until NQF level 9. What is always your starting point is the minimum requirements that were stipulated in the advert. If the advert says as a minimum it wants a 3-year degree or diploma, that is what they will pay. Alternatively, if in the advert it says postgraduate qualification, master's or whatever, or PhD advantageous, then it means there's room to negotiate there. All right. So having no experience and having a good qualification or an NQF 8-9 qualification is good in the long term. But at an entry point, it's a bit tricky to negotiate because of your qualification. All right. But different requirements are stipulated on the advert for different jobs and in different industries. So not all industries may take into account your qualification above the minimum that is required. Thanks, Makatu.
So Pumelele mentioned in his when talking to us that we have to negotiate just before we accept the job. So you realize after you get the job that you could have asked for a higher salary or for more money. So you need to negotiate that just before so that you don't have like regrets at the end of it all. And as a young graduate, that can be a bit scary to kind of navigate. That can be very intimidating for us. But then at the same time, when we heard from Prof, she did mention that we need to be humble and we need to just take what we can get. Don't be afraid to get our hands dirty and just volunteer and get involved where we can. So how then do we just navigate the boundary between that, because it's a bit blurry, because I understand that and I feel the same a lot of times, like we don't almost don't feel brave enough to negotiate and stand up for what we need or what we deserve, but at the same time we also understand that maybe we can do better and we only realize after that. So yeah, I think it would be good to hear from both speakers just to get a different perspective on that, or how do we navigate that.
Thanks, Alia. Makatu, can I shoot?
Yes, you can go on.
All right. Thanks, Alia. So thanks for that question. So let me look at it from two perspectives. So from the perspective of the employer, each role in a company has a budget, right? So the position has a budget. Let's say, for instance, the budget for that position is 120,000 per year. So that's 10,000 per month. A budget is fluid or it's flexible. There's a minimum, a median, and a max where you can't exceed. So what is for jobs that are advertised with the salary included? Basically, you will get what is advertised there. But for jobs that don't show the amount there is discretion in terms of how much to offer. So the employer sets a budget for this role, a minimum, a median, and a max, and then hires a person into that role. So now, from the perspective of you as a prospective job or an employee, how do you know that this is worth your skills? The sad part is you don't, right? But you can endeavor to find out how much, right? So for me personally, and maybe you can use this, I look at my living expenses, for instance. How much would it cost me to travel to and from work per month? How much would it cost me to rent or whatever my personal living expenses, sum them up. And then you can see that, okay, you actually need a job that pays this much, right? However, you can go online to websites such as PayScales. At PayScales, you go and search what is the salary for a consultant in whatever industry in South Africa. There it'll give you what is the minimum, maximum, and median. So you can almost align your budget, your personal expenses or living expenses to what that salary survey says, and you can almost compare whether you are willing to accept this. Again, that is if you have negotiating footprint. What by I mean, stepping in terms of if you're unemployed, you don't have a job, you're likely to take the job. However, if you want to negotiate, you use that information and present it to the employer and say, thank you so much for this salary of 10,000 Rand a month. However, would you be willing to renegotiate for 12,500 Rand and just leave it there? All right. If the email says, no, we're not negotiable, then at least you tried, right? And or if they say, no, we can't give you what you're asking for, how about 11? Which will show you that there was a budget and they aren't open to negotiating, and then they're considering the fact that you've applied your mind in requesting that. Some employers like to, justify, say, look, I'm currently on, if they're offering 10,000 and you are currently on 8,000, you can say, look, I'm not willing to move for anything less than 5,000 or less than 3,000. And then they will start negotiating. But again, if you're a new entrant, use the stats available to you. Go to pay scales, search for salary surveys, go to Indeed. How much does a consultant earn? And use that as a way to understand how you can ask for whatever salary that you want. Again, this information may not be easily available and it's not readily available for the public, but at least there are some free websites with South African currency and South African surveys which you can get. I think, let me park it there. Thank you, Makatu.
I have a question. I've heard people talking about job hopping to increase one's salary quicker. Would the HR professionals in the panel recommend this? Can we start with Muratua, Pumelele, and then Prof?
Yes, thank you. My view, and let me use myself. Let me be selfish on this. For 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 salary progression, yes, hop those jobs. All right. I advise you stay in one job for a minimum of 18 months. That's a year and a half. Just at least that. Remember, usually jobs have 3 or 6 months probation. So the first 6 months, you don't know what you're doing. You're learning that actual job. The second 6 months, you are now at least trying to apply, the previous cycles, skills. And the third 6 months, at least now you are beginning to repeat last year's cycle or the previous year's cycle. So at least one would say it's medium term. Look at it as if it was a qualification, a 3-year qualification. The toughest time is the second year, second semester. So that's 18 months. So you can stay in that role and then hop on to another role. Statistically or mathematically, and maybe Prof can approve or disprove what I'm saying, but cumulatively, a person who changes jobs earns significantly higher compared to a person who would have stayed in one job for 10 years. I've changed jobs over the past 8 years, I think about 4 times. And had I stayed in that role, I would have probably be earning 30% less than I am now. All right. So for wealth accumulation, not necessarily wealth, but for better salary or better pay, yes, hop the job, but give yourself some time, maybe 18 months to 2 years in one job. Also, hop the job if it is in line with your career aspirations. What do I mean by that? Don't hop jobs only for money. You could find yourself in a dead end industry or a dead end employer, if it is not in line with your career aspirations. For instance, I started off working in the public sector or public service. Then I changed to higher education, private higher education. Then I went into corporate or professional services, and I'm still there. So you get that experience through that industry experience by moving around, right? So for me, the long and short of it, should you job hop? Yes, but give yourself enough time in your current role so that you're not a flight risk in your new role. Give yourself at least 18 months to 24 months in one role, and then think about moving on after that. Over to Prof. Thank you for that question. Guys, even for me, cost to company uh, caught me off guard in my first job. Uh, because you see the full amount and you think it's all coming to you. All right. So to simply explain what does cost to company mean, let's go back to the example I made to say each job has a budget, right? the company or the organization sets aside a budget for this job, and whoever occupies that job is paid that money. So the tricky part is that if the job is 120,000 per year, which is 10,000 Rand per month, if it says cost to company, right, it means whoever occupies that role, their salary, their provident fund, their medical aid, their UIF, their tax comes from that 10,000 Rand. Let me repeat it. If it says 10,000 cost to company, whoever occupies that role, doesn't matter their circumstances, the position is budgeted for 10,000 Rand per month, CTC. It means if they choose Provident Fund, if they choose medical aid, they can't choose tax because it's default, depending on your salary. UIF, it comes from there. So that 10,000 Rand in the bank might be 6.8. That's the reality, which means all the benefits that are in that role will be taken from that salary amount, right? So cost to company is a common term that is used in private sector roles, and the other term, I think, inclusive of benefits, is usually in the public service. So the public service also structures their salaries in such a way that what you see in the advert may not necessarily be what you will get. So if you see a job in government for 240,000 per annum, or 20,000 per month, inclusive of benefits, so you need to get the lingo correct, get the termination correct. So I don't want to comment there. I think my colleagues in higher education are able to comment on that perspective. But CTC means cost to company, 10,000 Rand for this role. Whatever the employee opts to choose as benefits will be taken from there. Nothing is topped up. It comes from that amount.
Interview. Another one was, what advice do they have for candidates on how to effectively communicate their skills and experiences during an interview? So, with these two questions, I'm going to allow each of our speakers to answer them and give their last remarks in the process. And then after that, we're going to close off the question and answer session and then proceed with our program of the night. So I'm going to start with Pumelele, Prof, and then Muratua. Pumelele, over to you.
Thanks, Makati. Thanks for those questions. Red flags in an interview. Okay, let's start there. An interview is a conversation. The first thing I would advise you that when you are going into an interview, take it as a conversation. It's a formal conversation because it's people you don't know, but it's a conversation about yourself to them, right? So take it as that. Be comfortable with who you are, with what you know, and assuming that you have prepared for the interview. You have read through the job spec, the advert that you are responding to. You know what that job is about. You know what the company is about. The rest of the conversation is about telling us about yourself. So what skills you have, what problems have you solved, what communications skills have you have, what team dynamics do you have. All of that is a conversation. So treat it as a conversation. Red flags in an interview. The first thing is appearance, right? Cleanliness, neatness. Show up being presentable. Obviously, it's based on the industry you're working in and the job that you are applying for. Generally, your church clothes are good enough, all right? Assuming you don't wear church uniform, that is, no offense to everyone who does. However, formal, smart casual, that is applicable. For instance, guys who are working in IT, they can rock up with t-shirts and it's fine because it's not about how they look, it's what they do. But if you are office-based, corporate-based, etc., keep the appearance because that's the first impression that they have with you, right? Cleanliness as well. preparedness. All right, those are some of the red flags in the interview. We can physically sense whether you're nervous or not. We'll try and calm you down, give you a glass of coffee if it's in person. If it's not in person, a red flag is you running out of data or battery. During the interview, you would have known that you have an interview. Why have you not, effectively charge your phone or go to a Wi-Fi hotspot? So it's a combination of things, that can happen. So from my side, and Makato, I'm not too sure. You said, are we doing closing remarks now or just after we answer the question?
Remarks before we close the space. Off. So we're gonna start again with Pumelele, Prof, and then Muratua.
Thanks, Makatu. Thanks, everyone, for making time for this session. You will see that the title of this session says Life After Graduation, Job Hunting 2.0, which means there was a 1.0. I would urge you to go and listen to the 1.0. I've now become a resident with these talks because I was in the first one. So I felt it's important not to repeat what was said there, and rather refer people to that platform as well, because that's still valuable information to listen to. However, thank you for the platform. And guys, times are tough. We're actively looking for jobs. There are people who are discouraged, with looking for jobs, but keep the fire burning. Use the information available to you. I urge you to use your data wisely. You have used it wisely tonight to listen to these spaces. I'm not saying don't go on TikTok and social media, etc., but try and use your data effectively in searching for information, searching for advice, and following the correct platforms in order for you to get that breakthrough. And yes, if it is that you are studying because you're not finding a work opportunity, do that. All right, keep the fire burning, and use the information on these platforms, to best leverage yourself going forward. Thank you, Makat.